Kandahar Forward Operating Base hit different in July. The kind of heat that made your skin blister and your throat parch with every breath. Wind that carried sand fine enough to infiltrate sealed equipment, and a sun that hadn't stopped blazing for 47 days straight. Most medical personnel complained constantly about the conditions, but Emma Reeves just tightened her ponytail and kept working. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. At 28, Emma looked more like a kindergarten teacher than a combat nurse. Petite frame, maybe 5 feet 3 inches in boots, with wire-rimmed glasses that constantly slipped down her freckled nose. Her auburn hair was always tied back in a simple ponytail that brushed her shoulders. Everything about her screamed, "Handle with care," which was exactly how everyone treated her. "Morning, Emma," Lieutenant Davidson would call out as she organized medical supplies before dawn. "You sure you don't need help with those boxes? Look heavy for someone your size." She'd just smile, adjust her glasses, and keep working. Never complained. Never asked for easier assignments. While other nurses rotated shifts, Emma volunteered for the night emergency ward. While others socialized in the rec room, she spent her free time maintaining equipment that wasn't even her responsibility. The veterans found her endearing. "Sweet little thing," they'd say. Probably never raised her voice in her life. They were protective of her in that patronizing way that made Emma's jaw clench. Though she never let it show, what they didn't see were the notebooks she kept. Pages and pages of ballistics calculations, range estimations, wind pattern analyses drawn with the precision of a trained marksman. Late at night in her bunk, she'd sketch trajectory paths and weapon specifications by flashlight. One afternoon, the base's shooting range electronic target system malfunctioned. The control panel had shorted out, and the maintenance crew was stumped. Emma happened to be walking by when she heard them arguing about the problem. "Excuse me," she said quietly, pushing her glasses up. "Mind if I take a look?" Master Sergeant Thompson laughed. "Emma, honey, this is electrical work. You'll get shocked." But she was already kneeling by the open panel, her small hands tracing the wiring with surgical precision. Within minutes, she'd identified the problem and rerouted the faulty connection. The target system hummed to life. Thompson stared. "How the hell did you—" "I used to study this stuff," Emma said softly, wiping her hands on her scrubs. "But I quit halfway through. Nobody asked why. They just assumed she wasn't smart enough to finish, that she'd hit her limit and settled for nursing work instead." The truth was buried somewhere in her personnel file, a file nobody had bothered to read in 5 years. Base Commander Major Rachel Blackwood walked by her table in the mess hall one evening. Emma was alone, as usual, sketching rifle parts on a napkin while picking at her dinner. "Interesting hobby," Blackwood said, glancing at her drawings. "Just helps me think, ma'am," Emma replied quickly, folding the napkin. What she didn't tell her was that every line, every mechanism, every calculation was textbook perfect, the kind of precision that would make weapons instructors weep with pride. At night, when the base grew quiet and most personnel were asleep, Emma would walk to the armory. She'd stand next to the weapon racks, her eyes moving over the sniper rifles like she was greeting old friends. The night security officers thought it was odd, the little nurse with her fascination for long-range rifles. They had no idea she knew every spring, every pin, every firing mechanism in those weapons better than they did. Her bunkmate, Corporal Melissa Davis, asked her once, "Why don't you ever talk about before the Army? Like, where you grew up, what you did?" Emma adjusted her glasses and pulled her blanket higher. "Some things are better left buried, Mel." "But buried doesn't mean forgotten, right?" "No," Emma whispered in the dark. "Forgotten doesn't mean gone. Because when 4 soldiers were pinned down by enemy fire, and every qualified marksman was deployed elsewhere, the quiet girl with the wire-rimmed glasses would prove that some people don't need permission to save lives. They just need the chance. July 17th, 6:47 hours. The emergency alert cut through the dawn stillness like a knife. Emma jolted awake in her bunk, immediately alert. Around her, other nurses groaned and rolled over, but she was already pulling on her boots. Level 1 trauma alert meant someone was dying. She ran across the compound, her breath creating small clouds in the surprisingly cool morning air. The operation center was chaos. Radios crackling, officers shouting coordinates, the big situation board already marked with red emergency markers. "What's the situation?" she asked communications specialist Rivera. "Bad one," Rivera said grimly. "Squad pinned down at checkpoint Sierra. Sniper fire from the eastern ridge. 4 wounded already. Can't evac because the sniper has the LZ covered. Medevac can't land until the sniper's neutralized." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Emma looked at the tactical display. The sniper position was marked approximately 800 meters from the trap squad, elevated position with clear lines of sight to both the squad and any potential landing zones. "Where's our counter-sniper team?" "That's the problem," Rivera said, running a hand through his hair. "Our snipers are on mission with B Company in the Northern Valley. QRF is scrambling, but they're at least 30 minutes out." Emma felt her stomach drop. In these conditions, with critical injuries, 30 minutes might as well be 30 days. She slipped out of the operations center and headed to the shooting range where she'd been cleaning medical equipment earlier. The M24 sniper rifle she'd been eyeing during maintenance checks sat ready, already prepared for a training exercise that had been postponed. Her hands moved automatically, checking the scope, inspecting the bolt assembly, testing the bipod legs. Everything she'd learned in another life, in a program she'd never officially completed. "Emma?" Master Sergeant Thompson appeared behind her. "What are you doing?" She turned, her face calm but determined. "I can neutralize that sniper, Sergeant." Thompson blinked, then he laughed. "Honey, you're a nurse. This isn't a video game." 4 people are going to die if that sniper isn't taken out in the next 20 minutes, she said quietly. "Every qualified marksman is deployed elsewhere. Even if you knew how to shoot, which you don't, you're not authorized, you don't have clearance. You're not certified for combat operations." "I know." Emma was already walking toward the operations center. "But they're dying." She pushed through the doors to find Captain Morgan, the operations commander, coordinating with the PIN squad over the radio. "Captain Morgan," she said, "I can take out the sniper." Morgan looked up from his maps, eyebrows raised. He took in her small frame, her wire-rimmed glasses, her soft-spoken demeanor. Then he smiled like she'd just told the world's best joke. "Reeves, you're a trauma nurse. You don't have any combat clearance. Step aside and let the professionals handle this." Emma didn't argue. She just pushed her glasses up, unwrapped her stethoscope from around her neck, and walked quietly toward the door. Morgan called after her. "Where are you going?" She paused. "To do what needs to be done." By the time Morgan realized she wasn't heading back to her bunk, Emma was already at the armory, entering her access code into the security panel. Within minutes, she'd signed out an M24 sniper rifle, a spotting scope, and a basic load of ammunition. The radio crackled to life with Morgan's furious voice. "Reeves, stand down immediately. You are not authorized for combat operations." Emma's voice came back through the headset, calm and professional. "Sir, if that sniper isn't neutralized now, those 4 soldiers will be dead in 20 minutes. You're not qualified." "Qualification doesn't stop bleeding, sir." Morgan grabbed the radio so hard his knuckles went white. Around him, the operations room had gone dead silent. Through the windows, they could see the small figure moving across the compound toward the eastern perimeter, rifle slung across her back with mechanical precision. "Jesus Christ," whispered Rivera. "She actually looks like she knows what she's doing." Thompson burst into the room. "Captain, she just field stripped and reassembled that M24 in under 2 minutes. In these conditions, I've been handling firearms for 20 years, and I've seen maybe 3 snipers do it that fast." Morgan stared out at Emma as she slipped through the perimeter gate. "How is that possible?" "I don't know, but whoever taught her was military. High-level military." Morgan's intelligence officer, Lieutenant Walker, looked up from his computer terminal. "Sir, I pulled her personnel file. There's a classification flag on her service record." "What kind of flag?" The kind that means someone important wanted her background buried. Emma was moving quickly through the rocky terrain surrounding the base, staying low, using natural cover. Her movements weren't those of a nurse. They were the practiced motions of someone who had operated in hostile territory before. Her voice came through the radio again. "Operations, this is Eagle Eye." She hesitated only briefly before using the call sign, moving to overwatch position with line of sight to target. Morgan hesitated. His career could end with one wrong decision. But 4 soldiers were dying out there in the sand, and his qualified marksmen were half an hour away. Walker looked up again. "Sir, I managed to access part of her restricted file." Morgan turned. "And?" Emma Reeves didn't quit sniper training. "What?" She was the top student in her class. Perfect scores in long-range marksmanship, fieldcraft, and high-stress operations. Morgan felt his world tilt. Then why? Until she disobeyed a direct order, took an unauthorized shot to save civilians held as human shields by insurgents. Saved 12 people, including 4 children. She was quietly dismissed from the program, officially for insubordination, unofficially. Walker paused. Because she embarrassed superior officers who had refused to authorize the shot. Morgan stared at the file on Walker's screen. The classified sections were still blocked, but what he could see painted a picture of the most gifted sniper the Army had ever trained. "She was the best they'd ever seen," Walker continued. "And now she's moving into position to take an 800-meter shot in variable wind conditions, without a spotter, without clearance, without backup, without fear." Morgan grabbed his radio, his hands shaking. "Eagle Eye, you are cleared for overwatch operations." Emma found her position, a small outcropping of rocks with clear sight lines to the eastern ridge where the enemy sniper was operating. She set up quickly, deploying the bipod, checking the scope mount, arranging her body in the textbook sniper position. Her breathing slowed automatically, heart rate decreasing as she settled into the familiar routine. The enemy sniper was good, changing positions slightly after each shot, using the natural terrain for concealment. But Emma could see the pattern in the dust kicked up when the shooter moved, could predict the next firing position based on available cover. She adjusted her scope, factoring in distance, elevation, temperature, and the slight crosswind that was blowing from the north. In the back of her mind, muscle memory guided her through procedures she hadn't used in 5 years. She took 3 deep, measured breaths, then held on the exhale, her finger curling around the trigger. The rifle cracked once. 800 meters away, the enemy sniper crumpled behind his cover. "Target neutralized," Emma reported, her voice unchanged, as if she'd just announced a patient's blood pressure. "LZ is clear for medevac." In the operations center, silence reigned for 5 full seconds before eruption into controlled chaos. Orders flew, medevac was dispatched, security teams redirected to confirm the target. Documentation started for the after-action report. Morgan stared at the tactical display where the enemy sniper's position was now marked with a blue X. "How?" he whispered. Walker was still reading through the partially declassified file. "Sir, she wasn't just any sniper trainee. She was recruited straight out of ROTC for a special operations program. Long-range interdiction in non-permissive environments. The kind of shooting that required mathematical precision and skills that bordered on preternatural. She had completed successful operations in Syria that nobody else would attempt. Eliminated high-value targets at extreme ranges, saved dozens of lives. Until the day she was ordered to stand down during a hostage situation." Walker read further. "She was told to hold position while diplomatic channels were exhausted, but intelligence indicated the hostages would be executed within the hour. So she took the shot. Through 2 layers of glass, in high winds with multiple non-combatants in proximity. She neutralized 3 hostage-takers without a single civilian casualty. And her commanding officer wrote her up for insubordination. Said she was emotionally compromised and unable to follow orders. He'd already told his superiors that the hostages were acceptable losses, given the diplomatic complications. Morgan understood now. So they buried her, reassigned her to medical support, stripped her combat status, made sure she'd never operate again. Except she just did. Like she never stopped. Emma returned to base, as the medevac helicopter was landing with the rescued soldiers. She walked calmly across the tarmac, rifle properly cleared and slung, face showing no more emotion than if she'd just finished an inventory of medical supplies. She approached Morgan, who stood waiting with Thompson and Walker. "Sir," she said, coming to attention, "the M24 has been cleaned and is ready for return to the armory." Morgan found his voice. "At ease, Reeves." Emma relaxed slightly, but her posture remained formal. "4 wounded, all stable," she reported quietly. Medevac got to them in time. Morgan regarded her carefully. "Reeves, how did you—" "If you want to file charges, go ahead," she said simply. "But they're alive." That night, Morgan called his superior officer. "Colonel, I need the full story on Emma Reeves." "That's classified. 4 soldiers are alive because of her. Unclassify it." The colonel was quiet for a long moment. Reeves was the most gifted sniper we'd ever seen. Made shots that nobody else would attempt. But she was ordered to stand down during a hostage situation, and she refused. Took the shot anyway. What happened to her? She saved 12 people and embarrassed a general who had already written them off as acceptable losses. Morgan understood. So they destroyed her career, made sure she'd never operate again. Except, she just did, like she never stopped. The next morning, Emma arrived for her regular shift. Same scrubs, hair tied back as always, medical bag slung over her shoulder. But something had changed. When she walked through the medical center, conversation stopped. Junior medical personnel stepped aside with something that looked like reverence. Someone had written on the whiteboard in the staff room, "She doesn't need to prove anything." She took the shot when nobody else could. The 4 wounded soldiers had survived, full recovery expected for all of them. Private First Class Wilson, the least injured of the group, had asked to meet with Emma. "Ma'am," he said when she visited him in the recovery ward, "I heard you weren't even cleared for combat operations." Emma adjusted her glasses. "Clearance doesn't save lives, Private." "What does?" "Actions do. Why did you risk it?" "Your career? Court-martial? Everything?" She was quiet for a moment. "Because if I didn't, who would?" Wilson pulled out a piece of paper. "My entire squad signed this. We're requesting that you be reinstated as a combat specialist. Full sniper status." Emma read it, folded it carefully. "I appreciate this, but I don't need official recognition to do what's right. What if they punish you for yesterday?" For the first time since anyone could remember, Emma smiled. A real smile, not the polite one she usually wore. They already did 5 years ago. "I'm still here." That afternoon, Morgan received new orders from headquarters. Colonel Samantha Ortiz, commander of Special Operations Training Group, was flying in personally to review the, quote, unauthorized combat incident. Could go either way, Morgan told his staff, court-martial or commendation. But Morgan had spent the night reading Emma's complete file, the parts that had been declassified after yesterday's events. The picture it painted was of a sniper so skilled, so dedicated to saving lives, that her dismissal from the program looked less like justice and more like bureaucratic revenge. When Colonel Ortiz arrived, she asked to speak with Emma privately. "Reeves," she said, gesturing to a chair in Morgan's office. "I knew an Emma Reeves in Syria. Best sniper I ever served with." Emma saluted. "Yes, ma'am. That was me." "Whatever happened to that sniper?" "She's here, ma'am." "Prove it," Ortiz said, pointing through the window. At the shooting range, targets had been set up at varying distances, from 300 to 1,000 meters. Emma took position behind a standard-issue M24. What followed was a demonstration of marksmanship that made experienced soldiers look like amateurs by comparison. "She shoots like she's having a conversation with the bullet," Ortiz observed. "She says marksmanship is just applied physics," Morgan replied. "The trick is knowing when to break the rules." That evening, when Emma returned from the range, Colonel Ortiz was waiting. "I remember you, Reeves," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "You haven't changed. Still shooting like your targets are personal enemies." "No, ma'am. Not enemies. Just obstacles between me and saving someone." Ortiz smiled. "That's exactly what I mean." She paused. For what it's worth, that hostage rescue in Damascus? Those 12 civilians? They're all alive because you didn't follow orders. Yes, ma'am. Good soldiers follow orders. Great soldiers know when to break them. Emma adjusted her glasses. I just took the shot, ma'am. The rest is paperwork. Colonel Ortiz pulled a folder from her briefcase. Speaking of paperwork, I have some documents that need your signature. Emma tensed. Court-martial papers, most likely. 5 years of quiet service ended because she'd done what was right. You're being transferred to the Elite Special Operations Group, Ortiz said. Full combat status restored, commendation for extraordinary courage under impossible conditions, and a promotion to warrant officer. Emma stared at the papers. Ma'am, the review board read your complete file, all of it, including the parts that were classified to protect certain officers' reputations. Ortiz's voice carried an edge of controlled anger. Your dismissal from the sniper program was politically motivated. This is us fixing a mistake that should never have happened. Morgan watched from across the room. Will you accept the transfer, Reeves? Are there people who need saving? Always. Then yes, sir. But the real justice came the next day, when Morgan received another call from headquarters. The general who had ordered Emma's dismissal 5 years ago, General Harrison, was being quietly reassigned to a desk job in logistics. No ceremony, no fanfare, just a sudden transfer that everyone understood meant his career was effectively over. Someone finally read the after-action reports from Syria, the colonel told Morgan. Turns out Harrison had denied several operational requests for political reasons. Cost lives. The Reeves incident was just the tip of the iceberg. Morgan felt a grim satisfaction. What happens now? Now Reeves gets to do what she was born to do, and Harrison gets to count paperclips for the rest of his career. Word spread quickly through the base. The quiet nurse who'd taken out an enemy sniper wasn't just a hero. She was a decorated combat veteran whose career had been derailed by a corrupt officer. The same officer who was now being held accountable for his actions. Junior officers started requesting transfers to Kandahar, hoping to train under Emma. The base commander approved the construction of a new precision marksmanship facility specializing in high-stress combat shooting. They named it the Reeves Training Center. Corporal Davis, Emma's former bunkmate, found her packing her few belongings. You never told me you were a real sniper, Davis said. You never asked, Emma replied, folding her nurse uniforms. Besides, I was a real nurse too. Both things can be true. Will you miss this place? Emma looked around the small room that had been her home for 5 years. I'll miss the people, but I won't miss hiding who I am. She left her notebook on the desk for the next nurse. On the last page, she'd written, Don't judge people by the titles they carry. Judge them by how they carry others through danger. 3 months later, Emma stood in the briefing room of the Elite Special Operations Group in Fort Bragg. The walls were covered with photos of successful operations, maps of impossible terrain, and commendations for valor. This was where the military's best operators came to push the boundaries of what was possible. Your first mission, said Major Sullivan, the unit commander, is a training exercise. HVT extraction in a simulated urban environment. Conditions are controlled but challenging. It's within acceptable parameters. Emma studied the operation plan. Sir, these conditions aren't challenging. They're unrealistic. The target building has too many access points, and the extraction window is too generous. Which is why we're sending our best marksman, Sullivan said with a slight smile. Think you can handle it? For the first time in 5 years, Emma was being asked to do what she did best, with full authority and complete support. Yes, sir. The exercise went flawlessly. Emma provided overwatch protection that allowed the extraction team to complete their mission in record time. Her technique, a combination of precision shooting and tactical awareness, was recorded for training purposes. That's not standard procedure, observed Lieutenant Hayes, one of the unit's senior operators, after watching the footage. No, agreed Sullivan. It's better than standard. Word of Emma's skills spread throughout the special operations community. She began receiving requests for consultation on high-risk operations, training seminars for extreme environment shooting, and invitations to speak at tactical schools. But the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. A letter arrived, forwarded through military channels, postmarked from Syria. It was written in careful English by a man named Farid Malak. "Dear Miss Emma," it read, "you saved my family from the terrorists in Damascus 5 years ago. My son Jamal was only 7 then. He is now 12 and wants to become a doctor like the American woman who risked everything to save people she had never met. I thought you should know that your courage inspired more than just one rescue. It inspired a life." Emma read the letter 3 times before carefully folding it and placing it in her desk drawer next to her commendation. Major Sullivan found her there an hour later, staring out the window at the training grounds. "Regrets?" he asked. "No," she said quietly. "I was just thinking about all the people who told me I couldn't shoot, that I wasn't qualified, wasn't strong enough, wasn't the right kind of person. And they were wrong about everything, except one thing. I'm not the right kind of person to follow orders when people are dying." Sullivan nodded. "That's exactly why you're here." That evening, Emma called Captain Morgan at Kandahar. "How's the new nurse working out?" she asked. "Good, but she asks a lot of questions about you. Wants to know how you learned so much about tactical shooting." "What did you tell her?" "That some people are exactly who they appear to be, and others are who they need to be when the moment comes." 1 year later, Emma received an emergency call. Kandahar was requesting immediate assistance. A special forces team had been ambushed in the same area where she'd made her unauthorized shot. 6 operators pinned down, conditions even worse than before. "Weather's deteriorating." Morgan's voice crackled over the satellite phone. "Sandstorm incoming. Our shooters can't get a clear line of sight." Emma looked at Major Sullivan. He nodded. "Tell them we're en route," she said. This time, she wasn't operating alone. Lieutenant Hayes volunteered as her spotter, and the unit's best medic, Staff Sergeant Reynolds, handled the tactical equipment. They launched into conditions that would have grounded any conventional operation. As they approached Kandahar, Emma could see the entire base gathered at the landing zone. The same people who had watched her walk out with an unauthorized rifle now watched her return as the military's premier combat specialist. Morgan met them as they landed. "Good to see you again, Warrant Officer Reeves." "Good to be back, Captain." The operation was textbook perfect. All 6 operators extracted safely, covering fire provided with surgical precision, no complications. But as they prepared to depart, Morgan handed Emma a package from the base, he said. "Small token of appreciation." Inside was a photograph. Emma behind the sniper rifle during that first operation, hair coming loose from her ponytail, glasses slightly askew, but her expression calm and determined. Below it, an inscription. "She doesn't need to prove herself. She already took the shot when nobody else dared." That night, back at Fort Bragg, Emma found herself in the unit's ready room, surrounded by photos of successful operations and the faces of operators who'd pushed the boundaries of possibility. On her desk, next to the letter from Syria and her military commendations, she placed the photograph from Kandahar. Lieutenant Hayes stopped by. "You know what I realized today?" "What's that?" "When we first met, I thought you were just another good shooter who'd gotten a second chance. But watching you work, reading your files, you're not a sniper who learned to be a nurse. You're a healer who learned to shoot." Emma considered this. Maybe that's why I couldn't leave those people under fire. It wasn't about the shot. It was about the promise every medical professional makes. First, do no harm. Sometimes that means doing something harmful people tell you not to do, and sometimes it means taking a shot when everyone says you can't or shouldn't. Emma added, "There's a difference." Major Sullivan joined them. "Speaking of differences, we have another impossible mission tomorrow. Hostage situation in Somalia. Conditions are..." He paused, challenging Emma. Emma smiled, the same quiet smile that had puzzled her colleagues at Kandahar. "When do we deploy?" 0600 hours. Think you can handle it?" She stood, gathering her tactical manuals. "Sir, I've been handling impossible missions my whole career. The only difference now is that I have permission." As she walked toward the door, Sullivan called after her. "Reeves?" "Yes, sir?" "For what it's worth, some of us always knew you had permission. It just took the rest of the world a while to catch up." Outside, the sun was setting over the training grounds. Emma walked to the range where tomorrow's equipment waited, ready for pre-mission checks. She placed her hand on the rifle stock, the same gesture she'd made countless times in Kandahar when she thought nobody was watching. The difference was that now, she wasn't hiding who she was. In her pocket, her phone buzzed with a text message from Corporal Davis, still stationed at Kandahar. "Saw the news about your operation today. The new nurses here all want to learn to shoot. You started something." Emma typed back, "Tell them marksmanship isn't about rank or clearance. It's about being willing to take the shot when others need you to stand firm." She looked up at the training grounds where tomorrow's mission preparations waited. Somewhere out there, people needed saving. And for the first time in 5 years, she was exactly where she belonged. Not hiding in the shadows, but ready to take whatever shot came next. The world was full of quiet people doing extraordinary things. Teachers who could fight. Mechanics who could lead. Nurses who could shoot. They weren't waiting for permission. They were waiting for the moment when someone needed saving. And when that moment came, they wouldn't ask if they were qualified. They just asked, "If I don't do this, who will?" Sometimes, the most extraordinary people are the ones nobody notices until the threat appears, and they're the only ones willing to take the shot. July 17th, 6:47 hours. The emergency alert cut through the dawn stillness like a knife. Emma jolted awake in her bunk, immediately alert. Around her, other nurses groaned and rolled over, but she was already pulling on her boots. Level 1, trauma alert, meant someone was dying. She ran across the compound, her breath creating small clouds in the surprisingly cool morning air. The operations center was chaos. Radios crackling, officers shouting coordinates, the big situation board already marked with red emergency markers. "What's the situation?" she asked communications specialist Rivera. "Bad one," Rivera said grimly. "Squad pinned down at checkpoint Sierra. Sniper fire from the eastern ridge. 4 wounded already, can't evac because the sniper has the LZ covered. Medevac can't land until the sniper's neutralized." Emma looked at the tactical display. The sniper position was marked approximately 800 meters from the trapped squad. Elevated position with clear lines of sight to both the squad and any potential landing zones. "Where's our counter-sniper team?" "That's the problem," Rivera said, running a hand through his hair. "Our snipers are on mission with B Company in the Northern Valley. QRF is scrambling, but they're at least 30 minutes out." Emma felt her stomach drop. In these conditions, with critical injuries, 30 minutes might as well be 30 days. She slipped out of the operations center and headed to the shooting range where she'd been cleaning medical equipment earlier. The M24 sniper rifle she'd been eyeing during maintenance checks sat ready, already prepared for a training exercise that had been postponed. Her hands moved automatically, checking the scope, inspecting the bolt assembly, testing the bipod legs. Everything she'd learned in another life, in a program she'd never officially completed. "Emma?" Master Sergeant Thompson appeared behind her. "What are you doing?" She turned, her face calm but determined. "I can neutralize that sniper, Sergeant." Thompson blinked, then he laughed. "Honey, you're a nurse. This isn't a video game. 4 people are going to die if that sniper isn't taken out in the next 20 minutes, she said quietly. "Every qualified marksman is deployed elsewhere. Even if you knew how to shoot, which you don't, you're not authorized, you don't have clearance. You're not certified for combat operations." "I know." Emma was already walking toward the operations center. "But they're dying." She pushed through the doors to find Captain Morgan, the operations commander, coordinating with the pinned squad over the radio. "Captain Morgan," she said, "I can take out the sniper." Morgan looked up from his maps, eyebrows raised. He took in her small frame, her wire-rimmed glasses, her soft-spoken demeanor. Then he smiled like she'd just told the world's best joke. "Reeves, you're a trauma nurse. You don't have any combat clearance. Step aside and let the professionals handle this." Emma didn't argue. She just pushed her glasses up, unwrapped her stethoscope from around her neck, and walked quietly toward the door. Morgan called after her. "Where are you going?" She paused. to do what needs to be done. By the time Morgan realized she wasn't heading back to her bunk, Emma was already at the armory, entering her access code into the security panel. Within minutes, she'd signed out an M24 sniper rifle, a spotting scope, and a basic load of ammunition. The radio crackled to life with Morgan's furious voice. "Reeves, stand down immediately. You are not authorized for combat operations." Emma's voice came back through the headset, calm and professional. "Sir, if that sniper isn't neutralized now, those 4 soldiers will be dead in 20 minutes. You're not qualified. Qualification doesn't stop bleeding, sir." Morgan grabbed the radio so hard his knuckles went white. Around him, the operations room had gone dead silent. Through the windows, they could see the small figure moving across the compound toward the eastern perimeter. Rifle slung across her back with mechanical precision. "Jesus Christ," whispered Rivera. "She actually looks like she knows what she's doing." Thompson burst into the room. "Captain, she just field stripped and reassembled that M24 in under 2 minutes. In these conditions, I've been handling firearms for 20 years, and I've seen maybe 3 snipers do it that fast." Morgan stared out at Emma as she slipped through the perimeter gate. "How is that possible?" "I don't know, but whoever taught her was military, high-level military." Morgan's intelligence officer, Lieutenant Walker, looked up from his computer terminal. "Sir, I pulled her personnel file. There's a classification flag on her service record." "What kind of flag?" "The kind that means someone important wanted her background buried." Emma was moving quickly through the rocky terrain surrounding the base, staying low, using natural cover. Her movements weren't those of a nurse. They were the practiced motions of someone who had operated in hostile territory before. Her voice came through the radio again. "Operations, this is Eagle Eye." She hesitated only briefly before using the call sign, moving to overwatch position with line of sight to target. Morgan hesitated. His career could end with one wrong decision. But 4 soldiers were dying out there in the sand, and his qualified marksmen were half an hour away. Walker looked up again. "Sir, I managed to access part of her restricted file." Morgan turned. "And?" "Emma Reeves didn't quit sniper training." "What?" "She was the top student in her class. Perfect scores in long-range marksmanship, fieldcraft, and high-stress operations." Morgan felt his world tilt. "Then why?" "Until she disobeyed a direct order, took an unauthorized shot to save civilians held as human shields by insurgents. Saved 12 people, including 4 children. She was quietly dismissed from the program. Officially for insubordination. Unofficially." Walker paused. "Because she embarrassed superior officers who had refused to authorize the shot." Morgan stared at the file on Walker's screen. The classified sections were still blocked, but what he could see painted a picture of the most gifted sniper the Army had ever trained. "She was the best they'd ever seen," Walker continued. "And now she's moving into position to take an 800-meter shot in variable wind conditions without a spotter, without clearance, without backup, without fear." Morgan grabbed his radio, his hands shaking. "Eagle Eye, you are cleared for overwatch operations." Emma found her position, a small outcropping of rocks with clear sightlines to the eastern ridge where the enemy sniper was operating. She set up quickly, deploying the bipod, checking the scope mount, arranging her body in the textbook sniper position. Her breathing slowed automatically, heart rate decreasing as she settled into the familiar routine. The enemy sniper was good, changing positions slightly after each shot using the natural terrain for concealment. But Emma could see the pattern in the dust kicked up when the shooter moved, could predict the next firing position based on available cover. She adjusted her scope, factoring in distance, elevation, temperature, and the slight crosswind that was blowing from the north. In the back of her mind, muscle memory guided her through procedures she hadn't used in 5 years. She took 3 deep, measured breaths, then held on the exhale, her finger curling around the trigger. The rifle cracked once. 800 meters away, the enemy sniper crumpled behind his cover. "Target neutralized," Emma reported, her voice unchanged, as if she'd just announced a patient's blood pressure. "LZ is clear for medevac." Back at the operations center, Morgan stared at the radio in disbelief. A shot like that, at that distance, with those conditions, would challenge their best snipers. To make it on the first attempt, after 5 years away from the rifle, it defied explanation. "Confirm that, Eagle Eye," he said, his voice steady despite his racing thoughts. "Confirmed, sir," Emma replied. "Target is down. No movement." Morgan turned to Walker. "Get me aerial confirmation." The base's UAV operator redirected a surveillance drone to the enemy sniper's position. The thermal image showed a prone figure, motionless, with no heat signature in the head region. A perfect shot. "Medevac, you are cleared for immediate launch," Morgan ordered. "QRF, proceed to Checkpoint Sierra for wounded evacuation and site security." As the helicopter lifted off, Morgan turned back to Walker. "I want everything we have on Reeves. Every training record, every mission report, every evaluation. If she sneezed during basic training, I want to know about it." Walker nodded. "Working on it, sir. But most of her file is redacted or classified above my clearance level." "Then get someone with higher clearance," Morgan snapped. "This woman just made an impossible shot that saved 4 lives. I need to know who she really is." Outside the base perimeter, Emma remained in position, watching through her scope as the medevac helicopter approached the checkpoint. Standard procedure would be to return immediately, but something in her training, or perhaps her medical instincts, told her to maintain overwatch until the wounded were safely evacuated. The helicopter touched down in a swirl of dust. Medical personnel rushed out, loaded the wounded, and took off again within minutes. Only then did Emma begin to pack up her equipment. As she disassembled the rifle, her hands moved with practiced efficiency, but they were trembling slightly. The adrenaline was wearing off, and the reality of what she'd just done was setting in. 5 years of carefully constructed identity, of being just a nurse, shattered in a single moment. They would have questions now. Questions she wasn't sure she wanted to answer. Her radio crackled. "Eagle Eye, this is operations. What's your status?" Emma took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Returning to base, sir. ETA, 10 minutes." "Roger that. Security team will meet you at the east gate." She slung the rifle over her shoulder and began the trek back. Each step felt heavier than the last. She wasn't worried about the enemy. The area had been secured by the QRF. She was worried about facing what waited for her at the base. As she approached the perimeter, she could see a small welcoming committee: Morgan, Thompson, and 2 security personnel. Their expressions ranged from confused to suspicious to openly amazed. Emma straightened her shoulders, adjusted her glasses, and walked through the gate with the same quiet dignity she'd always shown. No triumph, no explanation, just the calm professionalism that had become her trademark. "Sir," she said, addressing Morgan, "request permission to return this equipment to the armory." Morgan studied her for a long moment. "Denied. Thompson will handle the equipment. You and I need to talk, Reeves." She nodded, unsurprised. "Yes, sir." Thompson took the rifle from her with a look of newfound respect. The weapon was immaculate, cleaned and properly cleared despite the urgency of the situation. It was the mark of a true professional. Morgan led Emma to his office, closing the door behind them. The room was sparse. A desk, 2 chairs, a map of the AO on the wall. He gestured for her to sit, then took his own seat behind the desk. "Explain," he said simply. Emma met his gaze. "What would you like me to explain, sir?" "Let's start with how a trauma nurse just made an 800-meter sniper shot in variable wind conditions without a spotter." She didn't flinch. "I was trained, sir." "By whom?" "The United States Army, sir. Special Operations Sniper School, Fort Benning. Class of 2017. Morgan leaned forward. "According to your official records, you failed out of that program." "No, sir. According to my official records, I was removed from that program." "For insubordination." "Yes, sir." Morgan studied her. The woman sitting before him was outwardly the same quiet, efficient nurse the base had known for years. But there was something different now. A steel in her eyes that had always been there but was now unmistakable. "Walker is accessing your classified records as we speak," he said. "He won't find much, sir. Most of it was buried after Damascus." "Damascus?" Morgan made a note. "The hostage situation Walker mentioned." Emma nodded but offered no elaboration. Morgan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Reeves, I'm trying to understand what happened here today. 1 minute you're our head trauma nurse, the next you're taking out enemy combatants at ranges that would make our best snipers sweat. Do you understand how that looks?" "Yes, sir. It looks like I misrepresented myself." "Did you?" Emma considered this. "No, sir. I am a qualified trauma nurse. Every certification in my medical file is legitimate. I simply omitted certain other qualifications. Qualifications that saved 4 lives today." "Yes, sir." Morgan leaned back in his chair. "Why, Reeves? Why hide who you are? Why spend 5 years bandaging cuts and setting broken bones when you could have been doing this?" He gestured vaguely toward the window, toward the eastern ridge where the enemy sniper lay. Emma was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft but unwavering. "Because I wasn't given a choice, sir. After Damascus, my options were to accept reassignment to medical services or face court-martial for disobeying direct orders. I chose to continue serving in whatever capacity they allowed. And never once thought about telling anyone the truth? Would you have believed me, sir? If I'd come to you yesterday and said I was a trained sniper with combat experience, would you have taken me seriously?" The question hung in the air between them. They both knew the answer. Morgan cleared his throat. "The medevac just landed. All 4 wounded are stable. Anderson has a GSW to the leg that'll need surgery, but they'll all make it." "Thank you for telling me, sir." "They're alive because of you, Reeves." Emma shook her head slightly. "They're alive because a threat was neutralized in time for proper medical evacuation. It doesn't matter who pulled the trigger." "It matters to them." Morgan stood up. "And it matters to me. I've been running combat operations for 15 years, and I've never seen anyone transition from medical services to combat operations that seamlessly. Most people would be shaking too hard to even load the weapon. With respect, sir, I never stopped being what I was trained to be. I just adapted to my circumstances." Morgan nodded slowly. "Wait here. I need to make some calls." As he left the office, Emma remained seated, her posture perfect, hands folded in her lap. To anyone passing by, she might have looked like she was waiting for a routine performance review. Only the slight tension around her eyes betrayed the storm of emotions beneath her calm exterior. Outside, the base was buzzing with the news. The quiet, unassuming nurse had taken out an enemy sniper at extreme range, saving 4 soldiers in the process. Rumors were already spreading. She was a secret CIA operative, a former Delta Force member, a legendary marksman in disguise. The truth, as always, was both simpler and more complex than the rumors. In the operations center, Walker had finally gained access to more of Emma's classified records. What he found made his eyes widen. "Captain," he called as Morgan entered. "You need to see this." Morgan crossed to Walker's terminal. On the screen was a partially declassified personnel file, much of it still redacted, but enough visible to tell a story. "Emma Reeves," Walker read. "Recruited directly from Officer Candidate School for the Special Operations Target Interdiction course. Graduated top of her class with the highest marksmanship scores in the program's history. Deployed to Syria for counterterrorism operations with Joint Special Operations Command." He scrolled down. "Assigned to a classified unit conducting high-value target elimination and hostage recovery. 13 confirmed operational deployments, 27 confirmed." Walker hesitated. 27 confirmed eliminations of hostile forces. 4 successful hostage rescues. Morgan stared at the screen. "This can't be the same woman." "Her service photo, sir." Walker pulled up a 5-year-old image. It was unmistakably Emma. Younger, her hair cut shorter, no glasses, wearing a combat uniform instead of medical scrubs. But the most striking difference was her eyes. In the photo, they were sharper, more focused, with none of the softness the base had come to associate with their quiet nurse. "What happened in Damascus?" Morgan asked. Walker found the mission report, heavily redacted, but the essential details were clear. Hostage situation. 12 civilians, American aid workers and local staff, held by a terrorist cell in Damascus. Diplomatic negotiations ongoing, but intelligence indicated imminent execution of hostages. Reeves was the sniper assigned to the rescue team. He continued reading. Team received orders to stand down, awaiting diplomatic resolution. Reeves, Walker paused. Reeves disobeyed the stand-down order, took position on her own initiative, and eliminated 3 hostage-takers with consecutive shots through multiple barriers. All hostages rescued without casualties. And for this, they ended her career? Morgan's voice was incredulous. The mission was politically sensitive, sir. The official position was to exhaust diplomatic channels before military intervention. Her actions, while successful, contradicted direct orders from the highest levels. Who gave those orders? Walker scrolled through the document. General William Harrison, sir. Special Operations Command. Morgan's expression darkened. Harrison. I've heard that name before. He's known for being cautious, politically minded. You mean he cares more about his career than the lives of his personnel? Walker didn't respond. He didn't need to. Morgan turned away from the screen. So they buried her. Took one of the best operators we had and stuck her in a medical unit because she embarrassed a general. Yes, sir. That appears to be the case. And she just accepted it? Became the person they told her to be? Until today, sir. Until lives were at stake. And there was no one else to do what needed to be done. Morgan nodded slowly. Get me a secure line to Colonel Ortiz at Special Operations Command. And Walker? Sir? Make sure this doesn't get buried again. When Morgan returned to his office, Emma was exactly as he'd left her, sitting quietly, waiting for whatever came next. But now he saw her differently. Not as the meek nurse who'd surprised everyone, but as the elite operator who'd spent years hiding in plain sight. Stand up, Reeves, he said. Emma rose smoothly to her feet, standing at attention. At ease. Morgan handed her a satellite phone. Colonel Samantha Ortiz wants to speak with you. Emma's composure slipped for just a moment, her eyes widening slightly at the name. She took the phone. Colonel Ortiz, this is Emma Reeves. Morgan couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but he watched Emma's face as she listened. Her expression remained controlled, but something in her posture changed. A subtle straightening of her spine, a lifting of her chin. Yes, ma'am, she said finally. I understand. Thank you, ma'am. She handed the phone back to Morgan, who raised an eyebrow in question. Colonel Ortiz is my former commanding officer from Syria. Emma explained quietly. She's been trying to get my file reviewed for 3 years. And now someone important is finally listening. Morgan nodded. The wounded are asking for you, not as their nurse, as the woman who saved their lives. Would you like to see them? For the first time since Morgan had known her, Emma seemed uncertain. Yes, I would. He led her to the medical center, where the 4 wounded soldiers had been stabilized and were awaiting further treatment. As they entered, the normal bustle of the medical staff faltered. Everyone turned to look at Emma, their colleague, suddenly transformed in their eyes. The head doctor, Major Lindsay, approached. Reeves? What the hell is going on? I'm hearing crazy stories about you taking out an enemy sniper. Before Emma could respond, one of the wounded soldiers called out from his bed. It's true, Doc. It was Sergeant Peterson, the squad leader. His leg was heavily bandaged, an IV running into his arm. She made a shot I wouldn't have believed if I hadn't seen it through my scope. 800 meters, right through the bastard's firing position. Emma moved to his bedside, her medical training taking over as she checked his vitals with practiced efficiency. You should be resting, Sergeant, she said quietly. Peterson shook his head. Been trying to figure it out. How our quiet little nurse turns out to be the best damn shot I've ever seen. I'm still a nurse, Sergeant. That part wasn't a lie. Never said it was. Peterson looked up at her with newfound respect. But you're something else too, aren't you? Emma adjusted his IV line, buying time before answering. I'm whatever the mission requires me to be. Peterson grinned through his pain. Well, today the mission required you to be a guardian angel. So thanks for that. The other wounded soldiers echoed his sentiments, their expressions a mixture of gratitude and awe. Emma moved among them, checking their conditions with the same care and attention she'd always shown. The only difference was that they no longer saw her as just the quiet nurse with the glasses. They saw her for what she truly was, a warrior who healed with both hands and rifle. As Emma completed her rounds, Major Lindsay pulled her aside. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" she asked, her voice a mixture of confusion and hurt. Emma met her gaze. "What would I have said, Major? By the way, before I was a nurse, I was an elite sniper with combat deployments that don't officially exist. We've worked together for 3 years, Reeves. I thought I knew you." "You do know me. I'm the same person I was yesterday. I just have a more complicated history than you realized." Lindsay studied her for a long moment, then sighed. "Well, I suppose I should be grateful. Those men would have died without your intervention." "They would have died without prompt medical evacuation," Emma corrected gently. "We saved them together, just as we always have." The Major's expression softened slightly. "Always the team player, aren't you, Reeves? Even when you've just done something extraordinary." "There's nothing extraordinary about doing what needs to be done, ma'am." "No?" Lindsay smiled faintly. "Then why is the entire base talking about it?" Emma had no answer for that. As dusk settled over the base, Emma returned to her quarters. The small room she shared with Corporal Davis felt different now. Smaller somehow, as if it belonged to a life she was rapidly leaving behind. Davis was waiting for her, sitting cross-legged on her bunk with an expression of barely contained excitement. "Is it true?" she blurted as soon as Emma walked in. Emma set her medical bag down carefully. "Is what true?" "Don't play dumb. The whole base is talking about it. You took out an enemy sniper from nearly a kilometer away. You saved Peterson's squad." Emma sighed, removing her glasses and rubbing the bridge of her nose. "Yes, that part is true." "And the other parts? That you were some kind of Special Forces super sniper? That you've got more confirmed kills than anyone on base? That you were part of a secret unit?" "The rumor mill has been busy," Emma said dryly, sitting on her own bunk. Davis leaned forward. "So, which parts are true?" Emma met her bunkmate's eager gaze. For 3 years, they'd shared this room. Davis had seen her at her most vulnerable, exhausted after double shifts, frustrated by difficult cases, homesick on holidays. But she'd never seen the person Emma had been before. "I was a sniper," Emma said finally. "Specialized training, classified deployments. The rest? Some of it's probably exaggerated." "Why didn't you ever say anything?" There was a hint of hurt in Davis's voice. "It wasn't relevant to my duties here." "Not relevant?" "Emma, you've been living a double life." Emma shook her head. "No, I've been living the only life they left me with." The bitter edge in her voice surprised them both. Emma hadn't allowed herself to feel the injustice of her situation for years. She'd accepted it, adapted to it, even found purpose in her medical work. But today had ripped open old wounds. Davis studied her with new eyes. What really happened? Why did they make you stop? Emma hesitated. Most of it was still classified. But after today, the truth would eventually come out anyway. "I disobeyed a direct order," she said simply. "There were hostages about to be executed. I was ordered to stand down. I didn't." "You saved them?" "Yes." "And they punished you for that?" "Politics is complicated, Mel. There were diplomatic considerations, career officers who didn't want to risk failure, people above my pay grade making decisions from air-conditioned offices far from the danger." Davis looked incredulous. "So they just, what? Took away everything you'd worked for? Pretended your skills didn't exist?" "They gave me a choice. Medical reassignment or court-martial." Emma's voice was flat. "I chose to continue serving however I could." For 5 years, you just accepted that? Never fought back? Emma stood up and moved to the small window that overlooked the base. In the distance, she could see the medical center where the wounded soldiers from today's mission were recovering. Fighting back wouldn't have saved any lives, she said quietly. Being a nurse has. Until today, Davis pointed out, when being a sniper saved lives that a nurse couldn't. Emma turned back to her bunkmate. That's the thing, Mel. I'm not one or the other. I'm both. Always have been. And now? What happens now? Before Emma could answer, there was a knock at their door. Davis opened it to find one of Morgan's staff. Warrant Officer Reeves, he said, addressing Emma with a rank she hadn't held in 5 years. Captain Morgan requests your presence in the briefing room immediately. Emma exchanged a glance with Davis, then nodded. I'll be right there. As she followed the staff member across the base, Emma was acutely aware of the stares following her. Word had spread quickly, and the base personnel, many of whom had barely noticed her before, now tracked her movements with undisguised curiosity. The briefing room was typically used for mission planning and intelligence updates. When Emma entered, she found Morgan waiting with Walker and several other senior officers, including Major Lindsay from the medical center. Reeves, Morgan said, gesturing to an empty chair. Thank you for joining us. Emma took the offered seat, maintaining her usual calm demeanor despite the unusual circumstances. I've spoken with Colonel Ortiz and several other officers at higher command, Morgan began. They've reviewed the situation and made some decisions that affect you directly. Emma braced herself. Despite her outward composure, her mind was racing through possibilities. Formal reprimand for unauthorized use of weapons, transfer to another base, perhaps even the court-martial that had been held over her head for years. Effective immediately, your official record is being amended to reflect your actual training and experience, Morgan continued. Your rank of warrant officer is being restored along with all associated benefits and back pay for the period of your reassignment. Emma blinked, the only sign of her surprise. Furthermore, a formal review has been initiated into the circumstances surrounding the Damascus incident and your subsequent career trajectory. Colonel Ortiz believes there were significant procedural irregularities that warrant investigation. Translation, Walker added with a slight smile. They're looking into whether General Harrison abused his authority to bury you for making him look bad. Morgan shot him a warning glance before continuing. In the meantime, we have an operational situation that requires your unique skill set. Emma straightened slightly. Sir? The sniper you neutralized today wasn't operating alone. Intelligence suggests he was part of a cell that's been targeting our supply convoys and patrols in this sector. We've identified a compound where we believe the rest of the cell is based. He pointed to a map on the wall, indicating a small cluster of buildings approximately 20 kilometers from the base. Under normal circumstances, we'd send in our sniper team to provide overwatch for a raid. But as you know, they're still deployed with B Company. Emma understood immediately. You want me to provide overwatch? Yes. You've demonstrated that your skills are current. The mission launches at 0400 hours. Captain Reynolds will command the raid element. You'll coordinate directly with him. Emma hesitated. Sir, my medical duties will be covered, Major Lindsay interjected. We've already adjusted the rotation. Morgan studied Emma carefully. This is a volunteer mission, Reeves. Given your unusual situation, I won't order you to participate. If you're not comfortable returning to operational status this quickly, we'll find another solution. The room fell silent as everyone waited for her response. Emma could feel the weight of their expectation, their curiosity about whether the quiet nurse could truly step back into her former role as a combat operator. But in her mind, she wasn't choosing between being a nurse and being a sniper. She was simply determining the best way to save lives in the current situation. I'll do it, she said simply. I'll need time to prepare and familiarize myself with the current equipment. Morgan nodded, visibly relieved. The armory is at your disposal. Thompson will assist you with whatever you need. As the briefing concluded and the officers began to file out, Major Lindsay hung back to speak with Emma privately. "Are you sure about this, Reeves?" she asked. "It's been 5 years since you've been in combat." Emma met her gaze steadily. "With respect, ma'am, that's not entirely accurate. The circumstances have changed, but the fundamentals remain the same. Assess, stabilize, prevent further damage. We're talking about taking lives, not saving them. Sometimes they're the same thing, Major. You know that as well as I do." Lindsay considered this, then nodded slowly. "Just be careful out there. The medical center would be poorer without you." "I appreciate that, ma'am." As Emma left the briefing room, she found Master Sergeant Thompson waiting for her. "Heard you're back in the game," he said without preamble. "Armory's this way, though. I guess you already know that." Emma fell into step beside him. "I owe you an apology, Sergeant." "For what?" "For not being honest about my background. For letting you think I was just a nurse who needed protection." Thompson snorted. "After what I saw today, I think I'm the one who needs protection." His expression grew more serious. "No apology needed, Reeves. We all have our stories. Some are just more classified than others." At the armory, Thompson unlocked the secure weapon storage and stepped aside. "Take what you need. I'll be over there pretending I know more about these weapons than you do." For the first time that day, Emma smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her usually serious face. "I could use some help, actually. A lot can change in 5 years." Together, they went through the available weapons. Emma selected an M110 semi-automatic sniper system, an upgrade from the bolt-action M24 she'd used earlier. "Nice choice," Thompson commented. "More firepower than the M24, still accurate out to 800 meters in the right hands. And better for multiple target scenarios," Emma added, checking the weapon's action with practiced ease. Thompson watched her hands move over the rifle. "You really were one of them, weren't you? The ghost snipers they send when things get messy." Emma didn't confirm or deny. Instead, she focused on selecting the appropriate ammunition, a spotting scope, and other essential equipment. "I'll need a secure radio, night vision, and a rangefinder," she said. "All business now. And access to the latest meteorological data for the target area?" "I'll set it up," Thompson assured her. "Anything else?" Emma paused, considering. "My old ghillie suit is probably long gone. We've got standard issue. That'll work. I'll need a few hours to modify it." Thompson raised an eyebrow. "Modify it how? Every environment has its own signature. Colors, textures, movement patterns. A good sniper adapts their concealment to the specific terrain they're operating in. I'll have the materials sent to your quarters." As Emma finished gathering her equipment, Thompson cleared his throat awkwardly. "For what it's worth, Reeves, I'm sorry about this morning. The way I laughed when you said you could take out that sniper. If I'd known—" "You couldn't have known," Emma interrupted gently. "That was the point. Still, I underestimated you. Won't happen again. Thank you, Sergeant." Back in her quarters, Emma found Davis had been joined by several other nurses and medical technicians from her shift. They fell silent as she entered, their expressions a mixture of awe and uncertainty. "We heard," one of them said finally, "about the mission tomorrow." Emma set down her equipment carefully. "News travels fast." "We wanted to wish you luck," another added, "and to say, well, we're proud to work with you, no matter what you did before or what you'll do tomorrow." Emma was touched by their support. For 5 years, these people had been her colleagues, her friends. They'd trusted her with their lives in medical emergencies, relied on her steady hands and calm demeanor. Now they were supporting her in a role they'd never imagined her in. "Thank you," she said simply. "That means a lot." As they filed out, Davis stayed behind, eyeing the equipment Emma had brought. "So what do you need to do to get ready?" she asked. Emma began unpacking the gear methodically. "Familiarize myself with the weapons system. Prepare my ghillie suit. Study the terrain and weather conditions. Review the operation plan." "Can I help?" Emma looked up, surprised by the offer. "You don't have to." "I want to," Davis insisted. "I may not know anything about sniping, but I can cut fabric or hold things or, I don't know, just be here." Emma's expression softened. "Actually, An extra pair of hands would be helpful for the ghillie suit. For the next several hours, they worked together, Emma modifying the camouflage suit to match the terrain she'd be operating in, Davis following her instructions with meticulous care. As they worked, Emma found herself sharing stories from her training days, the brutal physical challenges, the endless hours on the shooting range, the psychological pressure of knowing that one shot could mean the difference between mission success and failure. It wasn't all glamorous, she explained as she attached local vegetation to the suit. Most of sniper work is waiting, hours, sometimes days, in the same position, no movement, minimal water, maintaining absolute focus. Sounds a lot like surgery, Davis observed. Emma paused, considering this. I never thought about it that way, but you're right. The same precision, the same stakes. One wrong move could be catastrophic. Maybe that's why you're good at both. As midnight approached, Emma began her final preparations, checking and rechecking her equipment, reviewing the mission briefing materials, mentally walking through various scenarios. You should get some sleep, Davis suggested. Big day tomorrow. Emma nodded, but they both knew sleep would be elusive. Instead, she sat cross-legged on her bunk, closed her eyes, and began a series of breathing exercises, techniques she'd learned years ago to calm her mind and steady her hands before a mission. Davis watched her for a moment, then spoke quietly. Can I ask you something? Emma opened her eyes. Of course. Are you scared? About tomorrow? It was a question no one else had dared to ask. Not Morgan, not Thompson, not even the medical staff. They'd all assumed that because she'd done this before, because she demonstrated extraordinary skill, she must be confident about returning to combat operations. Yes, Emma admitted softly. Not of the mission itself, but of what comes after. What do you mean? For 5 years, I've been building a life here, as a nurse, as a healer. I've found purpose in that work. Tomorrow changes things. Once I step back into that role, I can never just be the quiet nurse again. Davis considered this. Maybe you were never just the quiet nurse to begin with. Maybe not. But it was simpler. Simpler isn't always better, Davis pointed out. The Emma Reeves who saved 4 lives today by doing what no one else could do, that's someone worth being, even if it's complicated. Emma smiled faintly. When did you get so wise, Mel? I hang around with smart people, Davis replied with a grin. Now seriously, try to get some sleep. I'll wake you at 0300. Against her expectations, Emma did sleep. A deep, dreamless rest that lasted until Davis gently shook her awake. She rose immediately, fully alert, her body remembering the rhythms of pre-mission preparation. She dressed in combat fatigues instead of her usual medical scrubs, securing her hair in a tight bun at the nape of her neck. The familiar weight of the tactical vest and equipment harness felt both strange and natural, like returning to a home she'd almost forgotten. As she prepared to leave, Davis stopped her at the door. Hey, Eagle Eye, she said, using the call sign Emma had chosen the day before. Come back safe. Emma nodded. I will. Outside, the base was quiet in the pre-dawn darkness. A small team had gathered near the motor pool, Captain Reynolds and his raid element, ready to move out. Emma approached, conscious of their curious glances. Reynolds stepped forward to meet her. Warrant Officer Reeves, he said formally. Thank you for joining us. Your skills will be invaluable for this operation. Happy to help, sir, Emma replied, matching his professional tone. I understand you've reviewed the operation plan? Yes, sir. I'll establish an overwatch position here. She indicated a ridge overlooking the target compound, providing cover for the raid element's approach and neutralizing any hostile forces that threaten the operation. Reynolds nodded, impressed by her grasp of the mission despite the short notice. Any questions or concerns? Just one, sir. What are the rules of engagement for non-combatants? The question revealed her priorities. Even as she prepared to return to combat, her medical training and ethical foundations remained at the forefront of her mind. Standard ROE, Reynolds assured her. We have solid intelligence that this compound is occupied solely by the hostile cell. Any non-combatants encountered will be secured and evacuated according to protocol. Understood, sir. As they moved toward the vehicles, Morgan appeared from the shadows. "Reeves," he called. "A moment." Emma stepped aside to speak with him privately. "I wanted to check on you personally," Morgan said. "This is an unusual situation, sending you back into combat operations so quickly after everything." "I'm prepared, sir." Morgan studied her face in the dim light. "I know you are. That's not what concerns me." "Sir? The last time you were in this position, making critical shots with lives on the line, the aftermath wasn't kind to you. I want to make sure history doesn't repeat itself." Emma appreciated his concern. "Different circumstances, sir. This is an authorized operation with clear objectives." "True, but the pressure remains the same." Morgan hesitated, then added, "I've spoken with Colonel Ortiz again. She wants you to know that regardless of today's outcome, your reinstatement is proceeding. No one is using this mission as a test or evaluation." "Thank you for telling me, sir." As they rejoined the group, Emma felt a subtle shift in her mindset. The same calm focus that had always preceded her most challenging operations. The doubts and uncertainties of the previous evening faded, replaced by absolute clarity of purpose. The convoy moved out silently, threading through the base's gates and into the darkened landscape beyond. Emma rode in the lead vehicle with Reynolds, reviewing the latest intelligence updates on a secure tablet. "Our target is this man," Reynolds explained, showing her a grainy photograph. "Fareed Khalil, leader of the cell responsible for attacks on coalition forces in this sector. Intelligence places him and 4 to 6 associates at the compound." Emma studied the photo and the accompanying intelligence brief. "The sniper I neutralized yesterday. He was part of this cell?" "Yes. They're forward observer. We believe they're planning a significant attack, possibly against the supply convoy scheduled for tomorrow." The implications were clear. If this operation failed, more lives would be at risk. The pressure was familiar, almost comforting in its intensity. As they approached the drop-off point for her infiltration, Reynolds gave her a final briefing. "We'll maintain radio silence until you're in position. The raid element will hold at the staging area until you give the all-clear. Estimated time to your position is 45 minutes on foot." Emma nodded, checking her equipment one last time. "I'll be ready." As she prepared to disembark, Reynolds added, "The men are calling this Operation Eagle Eye. Thought you should know." Emma smiled faintly at the adoption of her call sign. "Let's make sure it's successful, then." The terrain was challenging. Rocky outcroppings interspersed with patches of scrub vegetation, all bathed in the deep blue of pre-dawn light. Emma moved through it like a ghost, her modified ghillie suit breaking up her outline, her steps careful and deliberate to minimize sound and disturbance. This was the part of sniping that most people never understood: the fieldcraft, the patience, the ability to become part of the environment rather than an intruder within it. Emma had always excelled at this aspect of the job, her natural quietness and attention to detail serving her well. She reached her designated position with 15 minutes to spare, a natural depression in the ridgeline that offered both concealment and a clear line of sight to the target compound approximately 600 meters away. Working methodically, she set up her firing position, deploying the bipod, arranging her body for maximum stability, establishing natural rest points to maintain her position for extended periods. The compound was beginning to show signs of life as dawn approached. Lights appeared in one of the buildings. Shadows moved behind curtained windows. Emma observed through her scope, mentally mapping the layout and identifying potential threats. "Eagle Eye in position," she reported softly into her radio. "I have eyes on the target. 4 individuals visible, moving between buildings. No signs they're aware of our presence." "Roger that," Reynolds replied. "Raid element moving to stage point Alpha. Awaiting your go, no-go." Emma continued her surveillance, gathering critical intelligence as the compound's occupants began their day. She identified defensive positions, noted patterns of movement, confirmed the presence of weapons consistent with the cell's known arsenal. Most importantly, she confirmed the presence of Khalil himself. The cell leader appeared briefly at a window, his face matching the intelligence photos. "Target confirmed on site," she reported. "Additionally, I count 6 combatants total, all armed. 2 on rooftop sentry duty, 4 inside the main structure. Sentries are alert but not alarmed. Assessment of threat level? Reynolds asked. Emma considered the situation carefully. Moderate. Sentries have good visibility, but their attention is focused outward toward the main road. Recommend approach from the western ravine to minimize exposure. Concur. Moving to position now. Stand by to eliminate sentries on my mark. As the raid element maneuvered into position, Emma settled deeper into her role. Her breathing slowed, her focus narrowed to the scope before her, the targets within it, and the environmental factors that would affect her shots. Wind speed, direction, humidity, all carefully calculated and compensated for. In this moment, she wasn't Emma Reeves the nurse, or even Warrant Officer Reeves the reinstated sniper. She was simply the mechanism through which mission success would be achieved, the steady hand that would remove threats and protect her fellow soldiers. Eagle-Eye, this is Raid Leader. Reynolds' voice came through her earpiece. We are in position. Take the sentries on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. Emma's finger squeezed the trigger twice in rapid succession. Through her scope, she watched both sentries crumple simultaneously, neither having time to raise an alarm. Sentries down, she reported calmly. No reaction from inside the compound. You are clear to proceed. Moving now, Reynolds confirmed. Emma tracked the raid element's approach through her scope, ready to eliminate any threat that emerged. The operation was proceeding exactly as planned, until a previously undetected combatant appeared from an outbuilding, raising his weapon toward the exposed flank of the assault team. Without hesitation, Emma adjusted her aim and fired. The threat was neutralized instantly, before he could even squeeze off a shot. That evening, the medical center staff organized a small gathering to celebrate both her promotion and her new assignment. As Emma looked around at the colleagues who had worked alongside her for 5 years, most of whom had never suspected her hidden capabilities, she felt a profound sense of completion. Major Lindsay raised a glass in toast. To Emma Reeves, the best trauma nurse we've ever had, and apparently the best sniper too. You've shown us all that excellence knows no boundaries. And that appearances can be deceiving, Thompson added with a grin. Most importantly, Morgan said, joining the toast, you've shown that sometimes the right person for the job isn't the one with the most obvious qualifications. It's the one with the courage to step forward when others can't or won't. Emma accepted their good wishes with characteristic modesty, but privately she recognized the truth in their words. Her journey had been unique, from elite sniper to trauma nurse, and now to a pioneering role that combined both disciplines. But the underlying lesson was universal. True potential couldn't be defined by titles or limited by others' perceptions. As the gathering concluded, Peterson arrived. Still on crutches but recovering well, he pulled Emma aside for a private word. Just wanted to say thank you, ma'am, he said earnestly. Not just for saving my life twice over, but for showing us what's possible when you refuse to be boxed in. I was just doing my job, Sergeant, Emma replied with her usual understatement. That's just it, Peterson insisted. You kept doing your job, all of your jobs, even when they tried to tell you that you couldn't. That's a lesson worth learning. The next morning, Emma stood at the shooting range, watching the sunrise paint the mountains in gold and crimson. In her hands was the M110 rifle she'd used on the raid, the weapon that had helped her reclaim her identity and chart a new course for her future. She raised it to her shoulder, peering through the scope at a target 600 meters distant. Her breathing slowed, her heart rate steady, her focus absolute. The rifle cracked once, and downrange, the center of the target disintegrated. Still got it, I see, observed Colonel Ortiz, approaching from behind. Emma lowered the rifle. Some skills never leave you, ma'am. The best ones never do, Ortiz agreed. They just wait for the right moment to resurface. Together, they watched as the sun climbed higher, illuminating the base where Emma's journey had come full circle, from hiding her true capabilities to proudly demonstrating them, from being limited by others' decisions to charting her own course forward. You know, Ortiz said thoughtfully, in all my years of command, I've learned one consistent truth about exceptional personnel. What's that, ma'am? The truly extraordinary ones never fit neatly into the boxes we create for them. They inevitably find ways to transcend those limitations, either with permission or without it. Emma smiled, thinking of the quiet nurse she'd been and the dual-role operator she was becoming. Sometimes the most important qualifications aren't listed in any manual. No, Ortiz agreed. They're discovered in the moment when someone steps forward and says, "I can do this," when everyone else is saying it can't be done. As they walked back toward the base, Emma reflected on the strange twist of fate that had brought her to this point. What had begun as a punishment, her reassignment to medical duties, had ultimately expanded her capabilities and led her to a new, unprecedented role that would change how the military approached certain operations. She thought of all the quiet people doing extraordinary things throughout the military: the mechanics who could lead, the clerks who could fight, the nurses who could shoot. People whose full potential remained hidden until the moment when necessity called it forth. "If you don't mind my asking, ma'am," Emma said, "why did you fight so hard to restore my career? There are plenty of good snipers in the service." Ortiz considered the question carefully before answering. "Because what happened to you wasn't just an injustice to one soldier. It was a failure of the system to recognize and nurture exceptional talent. Your case represented something larger than yourself." She paused, then added, "And because I believe that the most effective fighting force isn't one where everyone stays in their lane, it's one where we encourage people to develop their full range of capabilities, even when those capabilities don't fit our preconceived notions." As they reached the base perimeter, Ortiz extended her hand. "Good luck with your new program, Warrant Officer Reeves. I expect to hear great things." "Thank you, ma'am," Emma replied, accepting the handshake. "For everything." She watched as Ortiz walked toward the waiting helicopter, then turned her gaze back to the medical center, where she'd spent the past 5 years. Soon, she would leave this place for a new assignment, a new challenge, a new chapter in her remarkable journey. But she would carry with her the most important lesson she'd learned: that sometimes the most extraordinary people are the ones nobody notices until the moment when their unique combination of skills becomes the difference between life and death. They called her just a nurse until she took down an enemy sniper, and in doing so, she didn't just save lives. She changed the way the military thought about what was possible when one person refused to be defined by a single title or limited by others' expectations. Emma Reeves, nurse, sniper, healer, protector, had finally become her complete self. And in her wake, she left a legacy that would inspire countless others to discover and embrace their own hidden capabilities, waiting like loaded weapons for the moment when duty called them to action. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.